Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today I have a very special guest, Mr. Joe Malone, U.S. Marine Corps vet and CEO of Southern Cross Company. This man has been deployed 7 times. He's been through the ringer, and he's come out of it, and he's on the other side. And as most of you know, 22 veterans a day die. And I think they've adjusted the number some, but if one is dying, um, surviving war and coming home and killing themselves, that's one too many. So I wanted to have my brother on here to talk about his experience and how he came out of the dark. So how you doing, Mr. Malone?
I'm doing great, man. Every day is awesome. And I don't just say that. I truly live that every single day.
So you tell me about how you, because we had a similar story. When I was looking through your story, you had a troubled youth, and I was involved with gangs, and a judge kind of made a choice for me, sort of. And you had kind of a troubled youth. Can you kind of just go through that?
Yeah, so I was raised on the southwest side of Chicago, and I just got involved in the wrong crowd at an early age. I thought it was cool to hang out with older people, and those older people were crackheads and meth heads and heroin addicts. And so, they just encouraged the wrong behavior out of me as a young kid. And unfortunately, I lost a lot of friends to drugs at this point and suicide. And a lot of them, the ones that are still alive, or they're still using. And fortunately, I was able to pull myself out of that by joining the military, and it ended up being a pretty good move for me.
How did you end up getting into MARSOC? Well, for those of you that don't know, that's Marine Special Operations. How did you get into that, and what brought you to that?
Yeah, so I did my first 4 years, and I just planned to get out. I didn't really want to make a career out of the military. And when I was 3 weeks from getting out, I was in Afghanistan. Like I got back, and then I literally had like 2 weeks to check out of the Marine Corps. Is pretty cool but chaotic at the same time. But when I was in Kabul, I ran into an old ammo technician guy that I knew, and he was with the MARSOC team supporting them. And they were on the base. I ended up talking with a few of the dudes this night, and one of the guys ended up being a dude named Chris Antonik. And a few days later, Chris Antonik died on an op. He stepped on an IED. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I just felt like my military time hadn't really like accumulated up to the point that I wanted it to. And the story that, he was sharing with me that night about the things they were doing, it really just resonated with me. And so about 6 months into being out of the Marine Corps, maybe about like 10 months, the Marine Special Operations Command, they opened up assessment and selection to inactive reservists, and that's the time when you're out of the military and you can technically be called back. And so, since the branch was so new, the Marines never had a special operations component before. I figured, well, hey, I could at least go try out, do assessment and selection, and if I don't make it, well, I'll go back to living on the beach in California, just like I was. And if I do make it, it'll be, possibly a calling, possibly some kind of an adventure. And so that's how I ended up getting into it.
Wow. And then resume you built. I mean, you had your exploits, and you went around and you did 7 deployments. That's a lot. I did 3 total in the Navy, and then one in country to the Iraq area for that war.
Hmm.
Um and so you were, after these 7 deployments, I mean, what brought you to finally leaving? I mean, if one deployment didn't bring you like it did to me when I went over there to the dirt, I mean, what brought you to finally letting it go?
There was some experiences on deployments that I didn't really agree with, and I didn't ever really agree with the military bureaucracy. Even in MARSOC, we were always just being held to this stupid standard, and it was really just ego driven and immature. And so I was kind of getting burnt out on that. But there was a couple of experiences, like in Iraq, after we pushed ISIS out of Mosul. The Iraqi forces turned on the Kurds, and the Kurds were just such a great people, great partner for us, best partner force I ever had up in the northern Iraq region. And we got told to pull out of the positions that we were in with the Kurds because the Iraqis were, they were coming to take back the land the Kurds had regained, which was historically Iraqi controlled territory. And the US government was like, well, we supported Iraq government, not a Kurdish government. And I'll never forget this. It was an M1 Abrams tank. We saw it on the feed on the ISR. And the M1 Abrams tank, US, brand new, that we gave to the Iraqi military, was flying a picture of the Iranian Ayatollah on the front of it. It was so big, it covered the entire front of the tank. And for anybody who doesn't know, it's like 20 by 20 feet, massive picture of the Ayatollah who's claimed death to America many times. And we knew that the Iranians had proxy forces within the Iraqi military. We actually started calling it instead of Operation Inherent Resolve, we started calling it Operation Iranian Resolve because it was just a joke. Like every single swath of territory we were taking back, we were literally just handing over to the Iranians. And, that's when that tank opened up fire on that Kurdish position and a couple of the dudes got killed. I was just like, I'm done. This is just stupid. In Afghanistan, we're working with a bunch of child molesters. And you could see how well that all turned out, handing it over to the Taliban like a bunch of freaking idiots. And then the whole experience in Iraq with ISIS and the Kurds and the Iraqi military, it just threw me over. Side note though, that story did have kind of a good short-term happy ending. The Kurdish position opened up fire on it with a German anti-tank rocket, and it blasted it and it killed all the dudes inside that tank. So that was kind of a nice little win. But yeah, I was done at that point.
Iran seems to have their hands. They've had their hands in a lot of stuff, and I mean, believe it or not, and I mean, you know this. Iraq was sort of like a buffer to Iran.
Yeah.
They'd been going at it since the 80s, 70s, and before, and they were kind of a buffer for them. And when Iraq fell, that kind of just left Iran in a vacuum. It left everything. So Iran kind of has the area, and the counterweight would probably be Saudi. I could be wrong. I'm not completely up on it, but like the counterweight of Saudi, and Iran's got their hands on everything, and apparently they had their hands on that too.
No, you're right. You look at like the western provinces in Iraq, and it's traditionally Sunni run, and then Shia over in the eastern part along Iran, and then you have Syria, which is sympathetic to Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran. They're all allied, and so we basically just opened up this. Like honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this recent attack that just took place in Israel. It would not surprise me in the least bit if all that weaponry was transported via Iraq and all the territory that we opened up for Iran to take over. I would not be the least bit surprised if that was the case.
Yeah, that kind of these shifting sands, it's real, and I mean, there was a lot of brothers and sisters that we left on that soil that their
Hmm.
blood got left in the soil, and I don't want to relitigate that, but there was a lot of things that went wrong in that one, so I could understand why it brought you, especially with that story, why it brought you there. So we both know that the military prepares us greatly when we're getting ready to get out when we come back from war. I mean, they're really good. So so how did it go for you when you were getting out?
Are you being sarcastic? Is that a joke?
Yes, I am
Oh,
being
okay.
seriously.
I was gonna
I,
say,
I'm
I don't know if I agree.
I said that with too much of a straight
Yeah.
face, but yeah, I was
No, that was
being real
good. That was good.
sarcastic.
That
Yeah.
was perfect. Yeah, no, it's a joke, dude. Congressionally mandated TAPS and TAMS course is what they call it. It's a 3-day resume building course, which isn't even a good resume building course. And they throw like a million resources at you. And then, by the way, when you try to contact these resources after exiting the military, it's such a convoluted system. And it's always some douchebag who's in charge of all this, who retired from the military, who tells you like my buddy who I'm with right now, he's like trying to get like his VRNE, his education. He was medically retired from being jacked up, and he's trying to get like a dog training certificate so he could train dogs to help veterans, like service dogs. And
Mm-hmm.
the guy, the VRNE, the education coordinator, literally is like telling him, "No, you shouldn't do that." It's like, dude, who the hell are you? Like you have no say on my life whatsoever, but it's always some retired, E9 or warrant officer, from the military who just can't let go of the fact that they're not in charge of anything anymore. And so they just continually perpetuate their own opinion on people's lives. And it drives me freaking nuts, dude. And then on top of it all, like, leaving the military, you lose like a major sense of purpose. And I started telling people this a couple weeks ago is look, do not let the military, your identity is not what you do. You should build what you do around your identity. So don't let your job define you. Define your job based off of you. And that requires some self reflection, which a lot of young vets don't do because they join when they're 18, they get out when they're 22, 23. And then if you do a whole career, I mean, it's crazy how brainwashing and conditioning it is. And so you have no sense of real identity, which leads to purposelessness, which leads to confusion, which leads to angst, which leads to drug and alcohol abuse, which leads to laziness. And then before you know it, you've cycled so far out of control that you end up offing yourself. And so the transition process is somewhat well intended, but it's just so grossly mismanaged. And I don't see that changing anytime in my lifetime, that's for sure.
Didn't have much for me when I got out in 06. I served from 96 to 06. And so I got to see peacetime Navy and then I got to see wartime Navy. And, that when they processed this out, it was just a page. Hey, you check anything in there and we're going to have to, they kind of discourage you to check anything out of the boxes that maybe you weren't feeling so well about some things. But that transition was tough. And you said, you had mentioned that you dealt with survivor's guilt. So take me to after that military when you're trying to find that identity you were talking about.
Yeah, a lot of guilt, a lot of guilt. You look at guys who had families, kids, pregnant wives, who were just genuine, just really good dudes. And it always makes you wonder, like, why didn't I get smoked? I did so much stupid shit, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And so when I was getting ready to leave the military, I knew I didn't really want like a 9 to 5 job. I probably wouldn't do good in that. Really entrepreneurial mindset. So I was like, all right, well, how hard is it to start a company? At about this time, Sandy Hook, or not Sandy Hook, Marjorie Stoneman down in Florida had just been shot up. And 14 out of the 17 casualties were locked in a classroom. And they were bragging about their lockdown procedures. And I started doing research on it. And I noticed that all these kids getting killed in schools are like locking down and sitting still. And I was like, why are they doing this? And so in the special operations community, we live in an insider threat environment. We had two green on blue incidents for both of my Afghan deployments. Not my team wasn't directly involved, but my sister team was, unfortunately, and another one was on the base that I was at. And so you're always planning contingencies and preparing for an active shooter incident, basically. So I thought I could start a company helping schools out in developing effective active shooter plans. For example, when you're on the first floor of a building that's being shot up and the person is inside the building, going from room to room, killing everybody, your best bet is to leave, smash a window, get out, and meet up at a pre-designated rally location a few hundred meters away. And I've talked to 57 schools since then, and none of them have worked with me, not a single one.
Wow. None of them. Well, that if and you understand this field, um, there there gets to be the experts, and this is the way we're gonna do it, and they set to a way of doing it, and that's the way they're gonna do it. And when somebody says, "Hey, there might be a little bit different," and you've seen this in government, you see it everywhere. There might be a little different way to do this that might be better. No, they get smashed. You don't have the money, the lobbyists, the stuff behind you that to make that happen, and that's kind of what happens with that. Now, movement, we know that and I didn't do combat like you did, but I know that movement is life. When you're moving around, you're moving around and you're going from position to position. You're it's all strategic. So explain to me why movement would be better.
Yeah, it's physics, distance equals time, which equals safety. That's the safety formula that I'm always preaching. And what that means is anytime anybody's ever trying to physically harm you, whether it's a punch, a stab, a shot, the further you are from that person, the more time that you have to think creatively and consciously and to think proactively. and the harder it is for them to harm you, just plain and simple. I can't stab you if you're 30 feet away from me. And if you're 30 yards away from me, it's hard to shoot you. If you're 50 yards away from me, it's hard to shoot you. How fast can a person run 50 yards when there's an active gun or violent threat in the area? Pretty dang fast. And statistics show, and there's a lot of variable reasons for this, so it's not like a hard statistic, but generally speaking, in the vast majority of active shooter incidents, less than 30 yards is where over like 90% of the casualties are. And the reason behind that is because it's in the initial round of gunfire or while hiding. And more people are killed while hiding than even in the initial burst of gunfire. So it's like, dude, what are we doing here? So the further you are from an active threat, the safer you are. It's plain and simple.
Yeah, the average person that doesn't train is not usually a very good shot, and
True.
distance and movement definitely help. And we know that when you're doing just target practice, the farther they are, or if they're shifting, if we have shifting targets, I mean, that could throw you off, especially if
Yeah.
you're not trained in it. So, I could definitely understand that. So you got out, you started this company, and just like every other vet, you wanted to serve your community. This is why I did this show, because this show kind of I put veterans on, I put different charities on, I put our local politicians, our national politicians on that represent my area, so that these people could see who they're voting for. But just like every other veteran, I wanted to serve my community. But you went through a darkness before you got there, and
Yeah.
talk to me about that darkness and coming out of that, my brother, because there's a lot of vets that are still in there. And I'll after you get to talking about this, I'm going to tell you a little something that I ran into.
Yeah. So it was really a combination of a lot of things. A lot of the guilt, a lot of the brain injuries that I didn't really understand I had, and drug and alcohol abuse, like just being lost in this like sense of purposelessness. And I ended up doing a bunch of high. I was a very high risk erratic behavior person at the time, and I'm just drinking and waking up on train tracks and just getting more and more depressed. And then I eventually lost all my money doing high risk stock options trading. And this is like literally the week I'm exiting the military. Like I lost everything. And then I took out a loan and then I lost all that right away. So now I'm like, I went from being like somewhat financially stable at least to having like $60,000 in debt with no means of paying it back, no job. And I was living out of a tent for a while on Onslow Beach in North Carolina. It's on Camp Lejeune. And then I was living out of my truck for several weeks before getting hooked up with a condo in the city for free. I mean, I had to work a lot for it, but I just was really lost, really confused, really guilt ridden, and it wasn't until I started to learn like what was happening in my brain. So like all the stuff in the TBI, the traumatic brain injury clinic, started to kind of like make sense to me. And I started to apply some of the things I was learning from people like John Osseroff, Bob Proctor, Ed Millett. And in conjunction with the science that was being given to me based off of like all the prognoses within the TBI clinic, I was able to literally begin to change my thoughts and my habits. And I thought to myself, when do I start breaking down the most, right? And now we're kind of getting into how I help coach people nowadays with vices and depression and stuff. It's like, look, when do you break down? Well, for me, it was about 7 p.m. at night. That's when I would start popping, drinks, slamming whiskeys when the demons would come out. So I said, okay, well, I need to go to bed before 7. So from the moment I would get home, all the lights were dimmed, drinking chamomile tea only, soothing music. Phone was completely off, and I was doing like college courses at the time. So I was developing a nighttime routine. You hear people talk a lot about morning routines, but nighttime routine I think is actually more important because it's setting you up for success the following day. You're ending your day on a positive note. And I would at the time I was taking sleeping meds. I don't anymore because I know how to physically exhaust myself at this point, but I just needed something to stop drinking. So I would take some sleeping meds. Boom, I'm out by 6:37 p.m. Well, just naturally, I was getting up at like 2, 3 in the morning, and the world is so still, so silent. I would be like looking at my phone, social media, nothing's changed, right? It's 3 a.m. And then I'd be like sitting there, I'm like, man, what am I gonna do? Right. So I just like I started reading some stuff online, started actually searching YouTube for the first time ever. And I started like researching the brain science behind what I was learning. That's how I got introduced to like Ed Milet, Bob Proctor, John Hassel, and Earl Nightingale was the first one actually. But then I started listening to these guys, and then I started to educate myself in the morning time, and then I found myself being, still and feeling kind of like God's presence. And then that began to change my thought pattern for the day. I'd start my day off on a more positive note, a higher vibrational frequency, as opposed to just this consistently negative person. And that started to open up my mind and my opportunities because I became more of a pleasurable person to be around, generally speaking. And it wasn't all just like boom, done overnight. This was a very up and down, left, right process, lots of slips, lots of falls. But ultimate, I mean, I won a fortune, then I lost a fortune two, three more times after that. And so I just learned though how to elevate my energy through physical exercise, proper thoughts, because what you think always manifests into your action, and what your actions are always going to create and manifest the world around you. So if you want to change your life and your world, then you must become a new person. And you can become a new person by guarding your thoughts and consciously intervening with every negative thought. So when some jerk cuts me off on the highway and I get mad, now I have the ability to just snap right in and say, don't go down that road. Bless that person because their life probably sucks and they need to feel significant by doing that. And that just brings me right back into my present self, my consciousness. I elevate myself back into that positive vibrational state. And the combination of all these things ultimately rewired my brain, restructured my brain to literally change me into a new person. And so that's how I've gotten to where I am here now today, is through changing the mindset, through physical exercise with an intent, and then purposefully setting out into the world every day with the intention and the drive and the purpose of helping people.
And you know what, that is, I love that you came out of that like that, because when my story, I came back and the VA threw a bunch of stuff at me, and
Yeah.
that was pretty much like like a lot of other vets. We got a bunch of stuff thrown at us, and here, you'll be fine, and then they pull the rug from under you when they found
Mm.
out that they were killing vets. So I went through such a deep, dark time, and I had to go to the VA to get help, to sit there, and I had got this opportunity to sit there with a bunch of my brothers that were going through the same thing and going through this group stuff. And I mean, I was very hesitant to go through this group stuff, but if I was going to go with my brothers, then okay. So I went in there, and it was the most rewarding, eye-opening time for me, because I did get to find out what was going on in my head. My wife helped me a lot with that. She's a beautiful soul. She was the one who did the research, because I didn't want to know nothing about it. I was too
Mm.
into that. But what I came to see was that we get to the point as veterans, when we're going through this, that we embrace this ugliness, that hurt, that it's like we get caught up in it, and we get to the point where we identify with it, where we don't want to let it go. It's terrible for us, but we're sitting there, we're still grabbing onto it. And one of the people in the VA had said, one of the therapists had said, when the pain to change becomes greater than the pain of staying the same, you'll change.
Right.
um, and I wanted to get your opinion on that, on how veterans kind of grab onto that funk when they should be letting go.
Yeah, it's all people, and it is heavier, I think, in the veteran community because we as human beings want our brains primitively. It's designed to survive. And so no matter how uncomfortable a situation might be for us, like a bad relationship or, a drug addiction or something, or living in a crappy home, making a crappy wage, we at least know that we're surviving. And because of the ability to survive in those conditions in that environment, it's more of a secured, like subconscious primitive thought process, as opposed to going out and trying something new. So like imagine that you live in this cave like your whole life. There's just enough animals that come in there, you could eat the animals and you could survive, but it's horrible, it's never light really, and you're kind of like sick of eating rats. but you're surviving. And then it's like, you're safe. And then there's this huge white light. You can't see anything that's beyond it. It's so blinding to your eyes that you have no clue what rests out beyond there. It could be a fire breathing monster. It could be a cliff where you just immediately drop off. It could be a black hole vacuum that sucks you out and kills you. And so you always reason with yourself, no, I don't, why would I go out there? I have no idea what's out there. And the unknown is potentially dangerous when I know here I'm capable of surviving. And so, what that therapist is saying, and what I really do agree with, is that once you just, like, let's say every time you're eating these rats, you get like some hair in your mouth and it drives you crazy because you choke on it or a bone or something and you almost die. And you're just, I'm sick of eating rats. I don't even care what's out there anymore. I just want to freaking get out of this damn cave. And then you push yourself past that wall of blinding light. And then when your eyes finally adjust, you realize that it's like a beautiful, luscious garden of Eden where there's fruits and animals running freely and healthy critters and, a whole new life. But until you're so uncomfortable with the conditions and you truly hate the conditions that you're in, that's what's been required for me every time. I needed to change my life. The last time was when this chick told me she had AIDS and she didn't, but she just was saying it, to get my attention, which was crazy. And I was ready to
Sure.
kill myself. I had a gun in my mouth and I passed out drunk with my finger still on the trigger. And that morning, I was just like, this sucks. And so that was my moment where I was ready to run out the cave. And it's life is short, man, and it's a beautiful, abundant thing. You just have to have the right mindset for it. So I think that that's what they're saying, and I totally agree.
Life is beautiful. It is, and it took me a long time to get to that. About 5.5, 6 years ago, after a suicide attempt, I decided to show up at the church. Show up, you know, just desperate, just I something, and there just so happened to be a Marine there named Joe
Hmm.
behind a coffee, and he uh, he started talking to me and got me to come back the next week. And so I show up the next week, and I've been there 5 years later, and now I serve coffee on Sunday morning. So when people
Yeah.
come into the church and I meet vets, they come in, they're hurting, they come in and they get coffee and they talk with me. And just like it happened to me, it's happening to them through me. And for me, it was faith. Other vets, hey, you get where you need to get. I don't care how you get there, but get there. But we got to get to the point of life. And so you get these. I've had these situations where I had brothers of mine or sisters of mine that, were just about ready to pull a gun on their head. What do you say to these people? What do you, I mean, obviously you could do the vet crisis line, you could do this, but as a veteran, what do you say to another veteran that's hurting like this?
Yeah, I don't ever say the Veterans Crisis Line. I don't ever say just reach out because I know exactly what you're thinking in those moments, and you're not gonna fucking reach out to anybody. So I don't know if I'm supposed to swear on this there now, block it out, but like you're just not. That's not the state of mind that you're in. And what I have to say to anybody who might be listening to this right now, who keeps like testing those waters every single night, is you are a sucker. You are an absolute punk who is falling victim to the desires and the agenda of our enemies. Look, that's pretty unconventional thing to say, but hear me out. You took an oath to defend the United States, its morals, its values, and its peoples and its constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic. And what is taking place right now is there's groups of people, whether it be Taliban, Al Qaeda, ISIS, whoever the hell, or these secret shadow government elite people who are like starting to come to the surface that we see these days. They want nothing more than veterans to kill themselves. I really want people to realize that the day that I had those guns in my mouth, those days I had the gun in my mouth, I was falling completely victim to their agenda, what they wanted me to do, just saying, pull the trigger, Joe, pull the trigger. One less critical, freedom loving, patriot, masculine individual who we need to worry about whenever it comes time to push over the rest of the weak and innocence in the area. Like, do it, Joe, kill yourself, because that's going to make our agenda so much easier. So don't be a victim, don't be a sucker to the agenda that they want you to do. They want you to kill themselves, they want veterans to kill themselves. Come together and unite, and follow through with the oath that you took to defend these people who have no clue what's going on in the world here in the United States of America, which is currently under attack in terms of our values and our morals. Do not let these people win. You are critical in the fight against evil, and you need to recognize that.
Yeah, you didn't, you brothers, you didn't survive all of that you survived just just to end it here. You survived things, and you were given this opportunity for life that maybe your brothers and sisters didn't get. They are buried there. You know that was it. Life ended for them. But there's no change that can happen. There's nothing. Game over once life is over. There's nothing that
Yeah,
happens after that. You know, for me, that's faith and stuff in God. But in general, you can't fix, you can't grow, you can't see more if you're dead. That's it.
you can. Yeah.
You don't have an opportunity to make those things better if you're dead. You're dead. You're gone. And there is no hope there. There's no hope there. And
Everything truly becomes for nothing at that point.
exactly. And it's seeing other vets that are doing good, that are coming out on the other side of this long journey of PTS and everything, that how it affects your brain. Dude, I'm honored to even talk to you, as my brother that's going through, and you're pushing it. I know this ain't easy. I know you've had some roadblocks, like you were saying earlier, but you keep on pushing, brother, and you're helping other vets, you're helping people, even when you don't feel like it. Because I know you wake up sometimes and you're like, "Fuck this, I ain't doing this
Oh
no
yeah.
more," and
Yeah.
yet you continue, and thank you so much for doing that.
No, thank you.
This is the point of the show, because I usually close out about now. This is the point of the show where I kind of give you the mic to, just kind of talk to the people and say what you want to say.
Yeah, those capable of great lethality are capable of preserving great peace. And lethality is more than just the ability to inflict great violence upon somebody in a justified sense. It's discipline, it's mindset, it's contribution to society. And the highest form of vibrational frequency is that of servitude and gratitude. And so, in these moments when you're sober of mind, if you're looking for somebody who's been there, who's had the gun in their mouth many times, who's wanted to just straight up kill everything, everybody, and themselves a million times over, but learned how to utilize the fundamentals of science in order to transform their life into something of great abundance and beauty, then I'm telling people now, while you're sober of mind, yeah, reach out. Joseph underscore Malone underscore official is up on Instagram. You can check out the website, email me. It's always me who answers my messages. And we're kicking off the Lethality University, where we're helping veterans and really anybody, but it was designed around veterans to keep them physically fit, mentally fit, teach them about real nutrition, how to dress, how to get jobs, work in the private sector, and then how to sharpen their skills, their lethality skills, and then even improve upon them at a much greater level as to what they currently are leaving the military with. And so be a part of something. You don't have to lose out on the brother, on the sisterhood. There's no judgment here, and when we can all learn how to take care of one another and look out for each other, well, then we provide a blanket of security that makes it pretty damn hard for the innocent to be taken advantage of and victim of. So hold true to your oath, stay real, and connect, so we can build this group of veterans and strengthen the United States of America again.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor talking to you, brother. I do appreciate you coming on my little show. I can't wait till this airs, and hopefully, if we could keep, if one veteran says, "Nah, I'm not going out like that," then this was worth it. Just one.
Yeah.
I mean, just give me one that says, "You know what? Nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not going there." That's, to me, that's, I live for that, brother. I just want to, just one. If I could say one, maybe I could save another. I live for
Yeah.
that. So, well,
Yeah, no, it's a great thing you got going on.
I appreciate you coming on. Can you stick around real quick after the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.